So hello everyone and welcome to this event. I think this is probably now our seventh one of these from the Bite Size and Professional series. So I'm Becky, a Chartered Occupational Psychologist, and I'll be facilitating the event today alongside Jonathan Rook, who's also a Chartered Psychologist and MD of Sova Middle East. We're also joined by Youssef Jeelani, who is a specialist in talent acquisition, and he's going to be here for the live interview section. So please do think about any questions you want to ask him. So once again, thank you for coming today. It's great to meet everyone virtually, great to see some familiar faces, and we've definitely got some supporters who have been to every one of these events so far, so it's really great to see. Please do let us know any feedback that you have from these events, or if you've got any topics you want us to discuss in the next ones, or if you would like to be a guest yourself like Youssef. And yeah, again, just share any other ideas that you want. I mean, we do mixtures of presentations, interviews, panel discussions, and we can really do anything that is of interest to people, or any information sharing sessions. So today we've actually got an hour. We've split this into two sections. We're going to do some slides followed by the live interview. So as I said, if you've got questions for Youssef, please write them in the chat box throughout, or by all means, we're happy to turn on your microphones and camera if you want to ask a question directly. So I'm just going to hand over now to John, who's going to give a very, very brief overview of Sova. This is just for the new joiners to our event, so that you know who we are. Okay, so over to you, John.
Thanks, Becky. And yes, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's well today. Yeah, so just in terms of Sova, so we basically combine the best of science and technology. So science from a psychometric perspective and an occupational psychology perspective. We're looking at building assessments which predict performance ultimately. We like to make sure that all our assessments are fully validated and they have a solid scientific basis. So we combine the science bit with technology. So from a technology perspective, that's introducing the latest from a assessment perspective in terms of what's possible with the platform and the interface, introducing fully virtual assessment centers and different tools which we have on the platform. We're also working with AI and machine learning as well, developments which are coming through this year. Just in terms of, there's a bit of a story in terms of the background to Sova. So when we were founded back in 2015, we were exclusively focusing at that point on whole person assessment. So we didn't just want to do things fragmented in terms of a personality test, an ability test. We wanted to start to blend assessments together. So using traditional psychometrics, but also including things like SJTs and video interviews, and put that all into one assessment, and thereby increase the precision and also the candidate engagement and reduce the time and cost of assessing. And then since 2015, we've had a series of updates in terms of bringing in digital assessment center, bringing in video interviews, and then moving to fully virtual last year. And then in the meantime, we've also opened offices in Australia and the Middle East. A key thing that happened for us last year was investment from our investors at Octopus, based over in the UK. And that's really enabled us to scale and expand and bring in some more of the kind of exciting things which we're trying to do within assessment under the sort of umbrella of changing assessment for good. So as of April 2021, we actually have over 2 million candidates assessed, and we've got 82 clients and counting across 20 countries, and we've got 45 full-time Sova employees, which has been a really sort of rapid expansion in the 5 years we've been operating, and lots more coming this year in terms of our product roadmap, the things that we're introducing onto our platform, including things like gamified, and that's sort of scientifically robust gamification is probably the best way to describe that. But there's lots more coming, and be happy to share more information. And just in terms of our platform, people that have joined before would have seen this overview before. But basically, what we're doing is wrapping everything into one single platform, one single portal. We use things like immersive home pages. So when candidates are coming through from a recruitment or development perspective, there's one single place where they can access psychometrics, situational judgment tests, their video interviews, and also the exercises they might be doing as part of an assessment center or development center. And all the data is in one place. And this is all hosted on Amazon Web Services, fully encrypted and security compliant. And we also do lots of integrations with different ATS and platform providers. Okay. So I think that's probably it from me for now. So I'll hand back to Becky.
Okay, thank you very much. So what are we talking about today? Well, the importance of high-performing teams and how we can use assessments to A, select high-performing teams and B, develop them. So just maybe if you move the slide on, John. So just some recent research that we found around high-performing teams. You know, why is it important to have a high-performing team? Well, some research from Harvard, we found that, you know, diversity, you know, we think of as gender, race and age, but actually it had no correlation with the team's performance. What did make a difference was having different perspectives and different styles of processing knowledge, so different sort of types of cognitive ability. We also found a study that from MIT, and they said that high-performing teams are made up of people who have high social sensitivity, who take turns when speaking, and this also included women in the group. So really, it's about emotional intelligence. You know, it's sort of what we know intuitively, but the research is really backing this up now. And then the final sort of study that's very relevant is in a report from McKinsey, and they found, you know, diverse groups obviously problem solve much better than non-diverse groups. And actually they found that the more diverse the group was, the better performance that they had in terms of the work that they were doing. And they assessed this from 366 public companies and put this information together. So really, this again shows the business case for ethically and gender diverse teams. So I suppose in summary, we're seeing that, you know, it's ethnicity, diversity, it's emotional intelligence, it's varied personalities, it's lots of different people to come together as a team. And the research is now showing this. So what are high performing teams? So really, if you take all of the research and information out there, it's about having expertise in the team, which is what we want. We also want them to be competent in the role that they're doing. So these are more sort of job specific. Then we also need shared mission, vision, and values. So we want people to be moving in the same direction. You don't want a team full of people who are very competent, but actually one has an idea to say expand the department and one wants to downsize the department. You know, this isn't going to work. We need shared goals, shared vision. And then sustainability. So this is important because you want to obviously recruit people for teams who are going to help maintain the team's performance over time, not just have, you know, 1 month of high sales figures, for example, or high performance. You want this to be sustained over time. And then all of this together, you know, can really create sort of high performing, sustainable teams which are fit for the future. And then some other benefits. So obviously greater innovation, increased productivity, more engaged individuals. And we all know, you know, the more engaged you are, the more likely you are to stay and to perform well. Enhanced well-being, you know, this is definitely very important, you know, over the last sort of 18 months. Motivated individuals. You know, you might have a team that is high performing for a bit, but then actually the individuals aren't motivated because they're not getting the rewards that they need. So there's all of these factors as well. And then all of this together, we're more likely to meet the goals from the department and then the organization. And then all of this wrapped around together creates greater employee value. So there really is so much emphasis on, you know, selecting and developing the right people. So people are key, as we know already, but the research is backing this up. And then selecting high performing teams. So obviously there's sort of internal and external selection. So internal being a candidate that you don't know, they might be new to the business and the organization, and then internal thinking about who are your high performers? How can we select them? How can we help them, the team, excel to the future? How can we identify leaders for the future? So selection of high performing teams. So with external candidates, obviously I'm sure you're all familiar, you probably all use these different types of multi-method assessments, but we've got screening parts, we've got the assessment part, and then the final decision and the development activities. So all of this is underpinned by role profiling. It's about understanding the role requirements, the competencies for the job, and then the person. So how do we fit the person to the role? And how do we do this in a way that is engaging and sustainable for the individual? And then from this, we can also obviously create onboarding plans, development plans from individuals, but we have to get the right people in the funnel at the beginning to then make the best decision. And then high potential identification. And actually, before I go on, I should say I'm whizzing through these slides just so we can get to the interview part. But if anyone doesn't have any particular questions, I can go back to any or share information with you afterwards. But this is just to give you an overview. So yeah, identifying high potential. Obviously, this is really important because we want to identify the right people to join the team or to join a new team within the organisation. So this, as you all know, is about defining potential, the assessment process designing development programs, and then thinking about succession planning. So understanding who's in your talent pipeline. Are these people ready? Do they have the skills and the attributes? But also, do they want it? Are they motivated? Do they want that promotion? So then defining potential, this is when we really think about, as I said, the readiness to progress as well as the potential. So we can use assessments to measure personality, motives, cognitive behaviours, and obviously we've got experience we can look at as well. But really we want to put these all together to see how ready is someone and what do they want for the future? How do we want to invest in this person for the future? And then succession planning, just a bit more on it, sort of a 9-box grid model. Obviously, if we look at sort of readiness and potential, we want people who have high readiness and high potential. We would say it's a risk, if someone's got low readiness and low potential, and then you've got people in between. So we can use assessments to help identify people in each of these areas to then see, how they should progress and what development they might need. And then developing high-performing teams. That was just a bit on developing the individuals, but now thinking about the teams. So let's say we've recruited individuals, it might be new graduates to a role. We want them to be embedded in integration into a team, but also we might have put individuals through a high potential program, and we want them to now work effectively and efficiently as a team. So how can we do this? So teamwork, obviously from what we know, it's about working towards shared purpose and goals. It's about sharing styles. It's complementing each other. We know that, from the previous research that people are likely to be in a high performing team if they have the right personality, the right motivations and the right characteristics for that team, and they're well matched and well suited. But we need to then help people to work together as a team. There's no point having people who are the right fit, but then they don't come together, they don't work as a team. So team building exercises can help do this. And again, you can use psychometrics to underpin this. And this will then help with the performance of the team. And again, it should be, I suppose, like a closed loop. People will get conditioned. They'll enjoy working as a team, they'll enjoy the rewards, and then they're likely to do more and perform in a better way. And so this Sova's team styles model. So we actually have a report that we use with team styles. So you're probably familiar with sort of the Belbin, different sort of team types. So this is sort of similar to this, but a newer version, a sort of, I suppose a more futuristic version of that. So the team model here is split into 8 team roles across 4 quadrants. So we've got the quadrants of exploring, directing, delivering, and critiquing. And what we do is we would give this to members of the team, let them all complete it. Then they might have some feedback on their own style and preference, and then come together as a group to share this information to help the team increase in their cohesiveness. And I'm just going to show you some pictures of the team just so you can see it. And again, if anyone's interested, we can share these afterwards, or if you would like to take the assessment yourself and see what your team styles profile is like, that's absolutely fine as well. So you can see we've got the 4 quadrants and then the 8 different types in between, and then you just simply get a score, sort of 1 to 5, you know, how likely you are to sort of fit into that category. And then you also get some text, some narrative. So this explains how you know, what your score is, but then what's really good is you get some team style implications. So these are really development points or watch points, and these can be used as a team, so you can go through it together to sort of say, hypothetically, if someone was, you know, high on being an analyst, strong analyst, then actually how are they likely to behave in a team scenario, and actually how would they want people to respond to them, and how well would they, say, work with someone else that has stronger preferences in other areas. So there are lots of different ways you can use it, but what's good is you get this information, and people can still use this for their own development as well. And then this is quite interesting. So if you joined the conversation at the very beginning of the Zoom call, Youssef was talking about virtual working, sort of the pros and cons of this. So actually at Sova, we've created a virtual working report. And again, if you want to take the assessment and have this report yourself, that's absolutely fine to do. What it does is it gives an output in terms of different aspects of virtual working. So we've got like keeping in touch, looking out for others, taking the lead, and I'll show you there's another page with some more on. Yeah, here it is. So sort of being open and modest. I quite like this one, coping with the chaos, thinking innovatively, dealing with the changes, and staying strong. So again, this gives information depending on your score, and then gives you some tips and some pointers about this. So this can also be used, you know, virtual teams are, I suppose, the norm now, or even a hybrid. You know, a lot of clients are doing a week in the office, a week at work. So it's a lot of change. So if somebody prefers being at home, actually, how do they then cope when they're back in the office? So lots of debate here, but yeah, this is a really useful report to sort of pinpoint some of these aspects and to think about how we can sort of develop people, or just help them, I suppose, be mindful of how they may be feeling or their team might be feeling. And then, of course, I think most of you have probably seen the trait and indicator profile. So this is what we'd use commonly with the leadership profile, which is on the next slide, as also a way of assessing people in the leadership space. And again, this gives lots of information, questions to explore. So we can use this leadership profile in a team context as well. So really, all of these reports you can use to select external candidates. You can help identify high potential internally, and also you can use in a more traditional team building, team development space. And then practical ways to develop teams. So there's obviously individual development planning you can do. You can do team awareness sessions. I think I've been hearing a lot about team building workshops online. So all of these immersive activities you can do sort of in person, you can actually do these online now, which lots of companies are doing, which I think is quite a nice idea. But also some people, their temperament isn't suited to these team games or team activities. You know, they'd much rather read a report, reflect, and then think, actually, intrapersonally, how can I start to change some of my behavior? Or how can I just be mindful and recognize that someone is perhaps different to me, and that's absolutely okay to be different. So again, lots of different ways to use this. And then monitoring and evaluation, you know, to develop teams. Sometimes the most simple things to do are often forgotten, you know, just personal development planning, monitoring, just checking in with teams, you know, how they're doing. even, once a month, what can we do differently next time? And just make it a more specific event rather than part of a team meeting. So yeah, just some other ways. And yeah, please do share if you've got some other ways as well. And then just some case studies before we go into the interview. So we thought this might be useful to see. I won't sort of go into too much detail of them, but I can send them to anyone afterwards. But just to show how assessments have been used in different contexts and some of the ROI on it. So thinking about, recruiting people into teams to make the whole team high performing, and then the organization, and also how can we develop. So if I just show you some of these. So I think the first one is, so John Lewis partnership in the UK. So this would be similar to a big sort of department store here. So they use selection questionnaires for their store advisors, their sort of customer advisors. And if you go to the next slide, John. So here they've screened so far around 500,000 applicants. So they've got sort of high volume, high turnover for this role. They use a multi-method selection assessment. So they've got videos, they've got SJT, personality assessments, and so on, which is integrated. And actually, what they found when they analysed the information is their teams are now made up of strong diversity and inclusion. So all of their outcomes around actually, differences in the teams work well, and they can use this information to put people in the right teams. So because they've got a lot of applicants, they can say, well, this person might be suited to this store or this location, or this person might then be ready to become a supervisor or a team leader. So you can use it sort of in this way. So it's just one example. Then we've got professional roles at Santander. So this is now thinking, well, how do we recruit person X, into a, say, mid-manager level role, and how can we help them work effectively in this team? So what Santander do is if you go to the next slide, John, they've got an emerging talent program, and they process about 60 to 80,000 applicants a year using, again, multi-method assessment, so video technology, personality, ability, and so on, and they get a fit score. And again, what they found is certain fit scores and having certain personality characteristics means different people work better in different teams. So they then create personalized development plans for these people just to help them, again, fit with the team and work better. And then some of their sort of ROI information they found is, one of these was, the accuracy of the high performers. So the assessments predict sort of 89% accuracy that these are going to be high performers. But also the inclusive intake, the gender balance can be looked at, the diversity within the different personality traits that somebody has can. So they look at all of this to, again, make sure their teams are diverse, they can bring in innovation, and that they can be high performing. And then I've just got one more to just touch on, just a different type of organization here. So we've got Generali in Europe, and they use assessments to help their leaders develop, help them enhance further in what they're doing. And again, this sort of makes the team stronger. So they work, if you go to the next slide, so yeah, they have a process here, which I'll show you. So they have assessments, SJTs, and then an online development center. So they use this to help build the capability within the team. So they look to highlight sort of strengths areas for development, and then use this just to help people on an individual basis develop, so that then when they come to the team can be high performing. So they do that. So that's just sort of 3 different ways to show how this can work, alongside obviously traditional sort of team building activities. But really what we're saying in essence is all of these are underpinned by psychometrics, by standardized and objective assessments. And it's just about knowing somebody to then know how they need to develop or how they need to work with others. And this slide here just shows an example of their report. But yeah, very, very quick run through. I'm sure you're all more interested to get to the interview with Youssef and John. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about anything I've just whizzed through? Please put in the note box or put your hand up and we can turn on your camera. But yeah, any Any thoughts on that, John or Youssef? Any questions, or we'll get on to the interview? Okay, great. So we're going to now have a bit of an interview. And again, as I said, please do type questions and we can ask Youssef or John. And that's great. I can see some questions here. So I'll start the questions, then answer these ones that have been asked by the audience. So really, first question to either John or Youssef, you choose. So what do you consider to be a high-performing team? You know, is there anything outside of what we've discussed, or what do you, if I go to you, Youssef, what do you see as a high-performing team? And actually before that, very rude of me, do you want to just introduce yourself, Youssef, and then answer the question?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, first of all, Becky, and thank you everyone for joining and making time. First of all, very insightful presentation. Appreciate it. By introduction, I'm Youssef. I lead corporate recruiting in Mubadala. I've been recruiting for the last 9 years in the Middle East. And I've been using Sova for a couple of years now, and I've been in one of the professional buy series before, and I find them very insightful. And I think the question and answers, a question that we get, you know, really get us to start thinking and, you know, sharing ideas. So thank you very much for having me today.
Great, thank you. No, great. We love having you on. You're a regular guest. You always have lots of insights and lots of information to give. So thank you, Youssef. So yeah, first question then. So what do you consider to be a high-performing team, or what do you look for, you know, as an expert in your field? What do you?
Yeah, so some of the points came up in one of your research papers, or let's say in the presentation. For me, there are two things that I think about whenever we consider a high-performing team. Number one is individuals that create psychological safety for employees and for the team, because I think it's very important to encourage different perspectives, like we've seen diversity of opinions, diversity of perspectives. And unfortunately, in many organizations, the loud person tends to be, you know, giving all the ideas, but we want to encourage everyone to be able to share ideas without feeling like they'll be judged or criticized or made fun of, right? So I think it's very important to have that high sensitivity, emotional intelligence to be able to promote the psychological safety and go out of our way to encourage people who are maybe shy or maybe, you know, prefer to reflect and think, to share their ideas. That's the first, in my opinion. And secondly, I believe we need to look at individuals that have, let's say, a longer term vision. So that's, again, the shared vision, shared mission, because you don't want to do what's best for now and for 1 year, 2 years. You want to think about what's best for the client and the organization 5 years down the line, right? With that focus, you together as a team, you know, perform very well and also think longer vision. And at times, as you see in many teams, one individual wants to do something that might be at his best interest or in their unit's best interest, but it's better to focus on a shared vision and shared mission. That's, I believe, the two most important things for me personally when it comes to, you know, describing a high-performing team.
Yeah, great. Exactly. No, thank you. No, it's good to hear. John, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to probably add that, yeah, I mean, the thing about the high-performing teams is that they're likely to be able to do more than other teams with similar resources and constraints. You know, going back to that sort of definition that we had at the beginning. So obviously, not all of your teams are going to be high-performing. There's only going to be, as you know, that they're perhaps quite a rare thing. So the key thing is that, you know, these teams, whatever it is, that's the correct mix of personality, temperaments, motivations, and the shared vision, of course, which is really important, that is unique to that team. That's the thing that's making them high performing. And obviously alignment to sort of business outcomes and you know, the future strategy of the organization is going to be really important. So I think that's one lesson from them, is that you know, whatever it is in the team, it's enabling them to do more with the same that other people have got. And the shared vision, yeah, is really important.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you. And I mean, what do you think about then, say we've got a high performing team, they meet all of the characteristics you two have discussed. Actually, what would happen if we put that team in a completely different situation?
They create a baseline, right? They create that culture, they create that expectation of what kind of behaviors we need to operate in an organization, right? So even if you move them around, they'll leave their mark. They'll set the bar high. So I believe, in my opinion, high-performing teams are the ones who drive the culture that we want to operate in a company. And individuals that don't want to operate in that culture probably will leave or get frustrated and not want to work anymore in that team, right? So I think it's very important. I believe they set the baseline for the organization's outcome.
Yeah.
And I think also, they should be agile enough to adapt to new goals or targets or new strategies that might be coming down the line. One of the things we do from a leadership perspective, and it's not just leaders that are important in teams, but having leaders who can be agile and assessing them around their sort of agile characteristics. I think that must be one really important thing for the high performing teams, is this idea of agility and ability to kind of deal with the change that we're seeing within organizations at the moment. So I think that would be definitely sort of top of my sort of list of traits I'm looking for in the members and the leaders of high performing teams, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I think it's perhaps really hard for more junior members of the team, especially if you say graduate, it's one of their first roles, that if they're in a high performing team, they like it, they're used to it, they know how it works. They've got leaders who are inspiring. And actually then when they progress and move to another team or go on rotation, I imagine that must be quite hard. So, perhaps that's something to think about, how we help people mobilize around the company. Yeah, good. So next question then. So why are high-performing teams important to the organization? So again, anything else to add to it, Youssef?
In my opinion, high-performing teams are the ones who, set the standard of what it's like to be great in the company, and everyone wants to be recognized, so they will want to perform at that level. So they set the baseline of the culture, of expectations of individuals, right? So I think it's very important to have and to recognize these individuals, because they're the ones who make or break the company's performance.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was just going to add to that. That's this sort of idea of McKinsey's, focus on the 5%. Because we can probably assume that only 5% of teams are going to be high performing. Maybe it's less than that. I'm not sure. It might depend on the organization. But if that's the case, it's probably going to be 5% of these teams are going to be the ones creating 95% of the value to the organization and the bottom line. So I think, that's why they're important, because they're going to be creating a disproportionate amount of value, compared to their cost base. So there's, if we can increase that sort of ratio of how many of the teams we have in an organization are indeed high performing, whatever that benchmark is going to be, the threshold is going to be, that's ultimately going to create more profit, more shareholder value, etc. So I think that's the sort of key thing for me.
Okay, thank you. So third question, probably one for Youssef to start. So how have you used assessments to select individuals to join high-performing teams internally and externally?
Yeah, so one of the things that we like to do is generally understand the kind of behaviors that the team leader looks for, and that maybe will help the team continue to perform the way they are, and use that as an area to assess in anyone. So for example, let's say this specific team needs individuals that can politely challenge leaders and stakeholders, and someone who can influence a lot of stakeholders without actually having authority. So we go back and we assess. You look at the assessment, there are many tools that you can use, right? So you go back and look at the traits and see if these individuals would thrive in this environment, and use the data that we get from assessments as a baseline to dig deeper in an interview and ask them about situations where they had to challenge different stakeholders. So I believe whether it's internally or externally, understanding what the team needs and going back and focusing on that and further assessing gives us more probability of hiring the right person and making sure that, we continue to have high performers join the team, the organization, etc.
Yeah, thank you. No, I agree. And I think it's like what we were saying, it's going back to the beginning, the drawing board, what is it you're looking for, what competencies and what's required for the role. Anything else to add to this, John?
Yeah, there's probably, sort of two things I've seen recently. One for sort of internal selection, where an organization in the Middle East wanted to look at leadership styles and leadership agility to then put together teams, which is basically like a high potential program. So they're using behavioral personality assessments in order to make those decisions and to put people into the right sort of mix. So there's a bit where you might be looking at reports, but also obviously the data extracts to then do that exercise, from a data perspective. The other thing that I've seen recently was a client who actually wanted to create a line manager fit profile. So this was for external recruitment. So we had external applicants completing a personality profile, and also the line managers would complete a personality profile. And then what we did was look at the correlation or fit really between how closely aligned their working styles and preferences were, not to then make a selection decision, but to inform that selection decision. So it's part of a sort of wider bank of information they were gaining. But that sort of indication of, with this individual, gel within this team based on what the team requirements are. So, I mean, that was a sort of bespoke report where quite a lot of customization had to take place to do that. But yeah, that was another thing that I saw recently.
Okay, thank you. Great. Let's move to question 4. So yeah, any new approaches out there that anyone's seen to assess high-performing teams or technology? Youssef, what technology have you used or seen?
I've seen a few individuals similar to what John mentioned previously, is looking at maybe the leadership style, looking at maybe the motivations. I think personally, one of the things that really helped us in understanding, or the most critical factor when hiring a person into a high-performing team, is understanding the motivation, the why. If it's aligned to what our teams internally or organization is looking at, they're more likely to fit and to add value, right? So if you want an individual that is motivated by inspiring, and then you need to take him or her into a team that allows them to be inspiring to other team members, right? So I think using that approach and looking at the motivation has been something that's been quite interesting for me personally. And I believe, again, once you are able to put a strong process, then using technology always helps to make it more objective, make it be able to have a lot of data points which we can use in the future, as Sova mentioned in the first presentation, to use it for predictive analytics. Nowadays, we see companies being able to make hiring decisions based on data for the last 5 years to say, if we were to hire an individual that's extremely inspiring, the attrition rate would drop to 1% because individuals would really be engaged and would love to work with this person. If we were to hire individuals that are extremely conscientious, we are able to see our profits increase by 10%, right? So there are a lot of correlations that we're seeing, and having technology to use this assessment is only going to be more and more important as we pass a couple of years. So my opinion, using motivations is more important. A lot of people don't look at this, you just look at technical fit and behaviors, but understanding the why is very important.
Yeah, great. No, thank you. And just to sort of build on that, on question 6, Youssef, so, can we use technology to increase team engagement? How can that sort of go hand in hand?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen last year a big challenge, especially for the junior talent. You know, being able to be engaged without having people around you can be difficult. But we've seen a few tools that have come out that encourage individuals to work together virtually, even though like you're sitting next to each other at a desk, just to have that FaceTime. So I think there are many innovative ideas of looking at increasing, let's say, engagement, sharing knowledge, because there are many tools, in my opinion. I personally still use the normal Teams. I do prefer in person, of course, but as and when required, I still think you need to have FaceTime with individuals, especially when you're getting to know them. If you have worked with someone for a couple of years, it's easier just to be around them virtually, but you need to try and use in-person meetings, in my opinion, personally.
Yeah. And anything to add to that, John?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say from what Youssef was talking about, not just sort of looking at traditional factors, but looking at things like motivation. From a technology perspective, you know, we're using scoring algorithms. So let's say a number of different assessments have been completed, but we can look at what is the requirement of the role or this specific team, and then we can, you know, basically just program a relatively simple algorithm which takes the standard scores and then produces an overall score in the system based on the level of fit, the level of potential in terms of the team. So that's something we can do with the technology. And I think, yeah, the other question, were you asking 5 yet about the virtual working? But there's other ways of engaging the team through you know, the assessment process, but also the things you might be able to do with them as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we're getting lots of questions through from the audience, which is great. So we're going to go through those, but I'm just conscious, I think, Youssef, you've got to dash off, haven't you?
Yeah, sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. I feel like we need to pick this up and have another discussion. You know, like I said, we've got lots of questions to get through after this. But Youssef, would it be okay if anyone has any specific questions for you that they write into us and we get back to you, or have another call, or is that okay?
Absolutely, anytime. They can connect with me on LinkedIn as well if they want to reach out directly. That's absolutely fine.
Oh, perfect. No, that's great. And I'm sure we'll have you back on soon, and we definitely need to talk about virtual working more. But yeah, thank you very much for your contributions and time once again.
Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful week. Take care.
That's okay. And we'll continue the questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, so John, so just on that with the question 5, the rise of the virtual working. So have you seen any risks, or have you personally experienced any?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably the same for lots of people around the world, but the risk of the virtual working is that there's you know, lack of social contact, and that sort of people need to be affiliated with other people within the team. I think there's a danger that you know, teams can, because they're dispersed and remote, obviously, that they can somehow, the performance might be affected by that sort of physical dispersion, because even if people are connecting over Zoom or Teams or however, it's not exactly the same as meeting people face to face. So I think there's, and if it is, there's still a sort of difference in the way in which it's experienced. So I think, yes, there is definitely a risk with the virtual working. Firms are still not absolutely 100% sure if they're going to bring people back, and there's different practices in terms of policies out there. So I think it needs to be, it needs to be looked at, because potentially, you know, if you've got lots of call center workers all working at home, they're not within that sort of unit as a team, and that could affect performance and things like that. And people can become distracted, clearly, if they're not in the office, and there's other sort of challenges associated with it, as well as the benefits.
Yeah, I agree. And I think as well, it's going to be hard for some people to, you know, just change, you know, especially if you're a call center. Now, I called a bank when I was in the UK when the pandemic first happened, and they answered from home, and they had all the equipment all set up. And I think you just think there's so many possibilities, but actually, is that best for the organisation or the individuals? And then how would they feel if they are now told, right, on Monday or Sunday you need to get back into the office? They might, obviously think to themselves, well, actually, I've got everything here. Why should I spend X amount on a train or commuting, or I don't want to? So yeah, definitely, I think lots to really think about in this space of the virtual working. I think we're definitely going to do another session on it, as it's really interesting. I'm just conscious of time, and we've got some other questions to go through. So we'll try and get through as many as we can. If not, we'll pick up with you individually afterwards. So John, should we just do those other questions now? Then we can finish off the slides.
Yeah.
So Saren's asked, so how are you using AI algorithms in the assessment space for fairness and transparency? So yeah, do you want to just give an overview of the AI process? Again, we'll be really quick, as I'm conscious I know you all need to get away soon.
Yeah, so from a fairness and transparency perspective, we basically monitor the assessments in the background to check whether there's any scales or scores within the assessment which are going to cause issues from a either a sort of selection ratio perspective, the scores of different groups. So that's basically what it does. Is so there's an algorithm in the background that looks at the scoring and then will make suggestions for adjustments accordingly. But obviously a human then needs to make the sort of final decision on any changes. But there's also an aspect of that which is around looking at the comparison groups as well. So all the items are sort of routinely checked by the AI algorithm to make sure that everything stacks up, depending on the data points you're looking at. And that could be fairness or diversity and inclusion and things like that. So basically just looking at the sort of mean differences between the scores for different groups of people or specific items within the test, if that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, do come back to us if you need more. That's fine. And then Anthony. So lots of questions here. So first one, can we just talk again a bit more about validation? So yeah, anything else to add on about bias in coding or cultural appropriateness? I suppose that's the diversity monitoring that you were saying, but yeah, anything else to add there?
We have lots of sort of case studies where we've linked scores on the assessments to performance, for example, sales performance, let's say. So we take sales figures and then we look at the scores of the teams. So we have done that type of work, and we have some information in our technical manual which is looking at correlating the assessment scores with performance on the job. And typically that we're obviously there, we'd be looking at, it could be a group of individuals, but those individuals are likely to be part of a team. So from that perspective, we do that sort of analysis where we run a validation study, and that's something which we do have quite a few of those different case studies. So probably what we can do is share, happy to share the technical manual with you directly to sort of see if there's anything further in there. But yeah, we've definitely found that we've seen scores on the assessments are definitely linked to performance.
Yeah, and just on the second part, sort of around countering biases. So actually, in all of our programming and coding, we have a continuous monitoring loop for diversity. And again, we've got a white paper on it we can share with you and sort of show you how it works. But basically, where we're getting to is when people sort of complete an assessment and there's some algorithms there predicting or thinking about changing something in the system, it monitors diversity, and if something isn't right, it's flagged and the algorithm is adjusted accordingly. So it's a bit like a live I suppose, adjustment of scores and things. But we can, share more with you. We're actually going to do another sort of workshop on that as well, to go into the AI and how it's been used currently, but also what's coming out, what's being created in the future. But yeah, again, come back if you need more info. And then next question, I think we've answered. Yeah, so case studies as well around the team, high performing teams. So so let me just read the question. So have case studies gone further to demonstrate if you balance the team in line with the assessment output performed higher than it always would? So yeah, John, any thoughts on this second question?
Well, that was the one I was just talking to a minute ago.
Oh, okay. Oh, you saw another one. Sorry. We'll go back and answer that one in a minute. And then another one. So can we share more about the frequency and how we monitor and evaluate the outcomes of team building workshops? So yeah, that's a good question. Different question. Do you want me to answer this one? So
yeah, you can say that.
Yeah. One. So what we'd, and I must apologise, there's some building work going on, so I hope you can hear me against all the drilling and the noise. So what we would do with the team building workshop is, you can sometimes clients do this alongside, say, a 360 assessment. So you might do it as part of a larger process, and then of course have manager ratings sort of before or sort of after a period of intervention. Or you can simply just sort of ask the people, sort of have a survey, line manager survey, or you might look at performance metrics if it's something, say, very tangible, like sales. You've had the intervention, then how that's changed. So lots of different ways you can do it, sort of short term, long term. But really, what you want to do is have it as part of a campaign or a process. So rather than just having a one-off workshop for the team, it's about embedding it, engaging it in, thinking about, well, actually, this is part of a wider development piece. So can we assess individuals? Can we then have a team sort of workshop as part of it? And then afterwards, for the future, have they got ongoing personal development plans, and what they can do, how effectively can they work with the team? And then we can start looking at the indicators and KPIs. Yeah, I hope that answers the question a bit more. And does anyone else have any other questions? Do type in. Otherwise, we'll just keep going with the slides, as it's nearly 10, and then we can come back and answer. So yeah, do you want to go to the next slide? So yes, just really sort of next steps. So if anyone wants any system demos or case studies, white papers, we'll send you relevant information to your questions, which will hopefully be quite helpful. Our next event is the 26th of July. So again, if you want to attend that, please do come along. And then just to say, we've actually got a new Sova community. And what this is an online portal. It's a bit like a Sova only LinkedIn, I suppose. So you can come into the community, there'll be information there. It's the best practice, training courses, white papers, case studies, chats, lots of things. So where we're getting to is that all of our content will sort of be on there. And this is a closed group. So there's some questions we're able to get in. We have some rules around sort of code of conduct, but basically it's very sort of similar to, I suppose, a professional working group, but we have people from all around the world sort of there. So just to sort of flag that as well. But yeah, just to really say, any final questions or thoughts, let us know. Please let us know now or send in afterwards. And just to really thank you for your continued support with our workshops and all of the questions and content. It always inspires us and makes us want to think about what we can do next and talk about next. So any other questions or final words from you, John?
No, just many thanks for joining. And if there's sort of further follow-up, we're always happy to talk. So we'd love to hear from you. So please drop me or Becky a line. Join the community, have a look on the website, submit a question to Alan. We have an Ask Alan function. So, we'd love to have a conversation. So yeah, please get in touch.
Yeah, please do. Or if anyone wants to stay on the line, we're here now as well. But otherwise, yeah, we'll say thank you and goodbye, and hopefully see you again soon.